And welcome back. And we are moving into a first conversation this morning. As I had mentioned, there is an ongoing boycott between the media and the Belize Police Department. So today we're having a conversation about the role of the media in citizen security and freedom of the press. And so with me, we have Duane Moody, who is, of course, a reporter here at Channel 5 Great Belize Productions. We have in the middle Marion, assistant news editor for the Reporter newspaper. On the end, Isani Cayetano, also reporter for Great Belize Productions. And with me as a guest co-host and also former reporter and attorney, Audrey Matura. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm not too concerned about people being shy or quiet in this particular conversation, of course. But what we want to start off with is kind of just to set the background information as to how, once again, the media and the police department has reached this point. Isani?
Okay. I'll just give some background from last year, and then we'll go into what transpired earlier this year and what I would say adjustments were made in terms of tightening and strengthening the relationship that is shared. Okay, in 2016, what we came to accept as the status quo between the media and the police department was the fact that under the previous commander for the South Side, we were able to make direct requests for interviews when we saw it fit. So that if there was a heinous crime committed in the city, for instance, or any other part of the country, via an established WhatsApp group that included regional commanders as well as members of the media, we were able to make certain requests for information and or interviews. That was the status quo, and it was working from our end fairly well. Mind you, there may have been incidents indeed where police officers either divulged too much information or were ill-prepared coming into interviews, and certain errors were made on their end. Nonetheless, that train kept moving, in a manner of speaking. Earlier this year, all of that changed. In the beginning of January, the fact that there was a spate of gun violence in December, going into January, there was a press brief that was convened between the media and the police. In that press brief, I recall being there, you had two regional commanders. You had ACP Chester Williams for Eastern Division South, and you had ACP Edward Broster for Rural Eastern Division. And if I recall correctly, one said that this would be the year where there would be a clampdown on crime and criminals. This is me paraphrasing what was said. The other, I presume, not to be outdone, stepped up and said, well, this is the year where, quote unquote, that a bad man are run to the media for interviews. Right? That was said. That was said. That is on the record. I believe from that point, the higher-ups within the department clamped down on them. I believe they may have misspoken in terms of what they've said, may have been taken extremely. So that was when the first clampdown happened.
Yeah.
So that when we were requesting information and we were requesting interviews, we met with a closed door. For all requests that were made, we met with a closed door. So that was the first breakdown. And there was a gradual erosion over time, much the same as what we're experiencing now, to where a general meeting was called, and I recall this was a meeting that took place at the Old Belize Jungle Pavilion, where we all sat down around the table and we voiced our concerns collectively, from the end of the media as well as from the police department's end. At the end of which, a select group of us formed a task force where we sat down and we ironed out a media relations policy, a handbook that outlines specifically how the media and the police department are supposed to interface with each other. A handbook was the result of all of that consultation. And as far as I know, you guys will correct me if I'm wrong, we, the media, haven't really departed from what was contained in that handbook.
Yeah.
It became sort of our Bible in terms of how we deal with each other.
And that policy outlined specifically what? A request for interviews if
How
needed
requests
be.
are being made to the police department. How the police department, while they're on the scene of a crime, for instance, handles the media. Right? What is deemed information that the police can withhold for either national security interest or what have you.
Yeah.
It also entails what processes or protocols are to be in place if we're requesting information from certain members of the department. So it's very clear in its scope in terms of what we can and what we can't do on either end.
And did it address who are the spokespersons for the police department? At what level they can speak and how much?
Not by name, however, a media relations unit was formed, right? And we all know who the three persons in that media relations unit were, because Fitzroy has since been transferred, no? But up until that time, there were three persons who were primarily dealing with information being disseminated to the media. And this was overseen by ACP Chester Williams as the former commander of ED South. This was earlier in the year before July 1st.
So jumping forward to where we are today, I think one of the things that seems to be a lingering question is why was there a return to this contentious type of relationship between the media and police? What triggered this particular situation?
If I may tackle that, Marlene, and good morning to all your viewers. It happened when an interview occurred. I believe it was Channel 7 who interviewed Mr. Vidal. And some words were exchanged, and Mr. Vidal ended up getting sued. I believe he made some
Strong words were said.
comments against ACP Chester Williams, and we all know how that ended up. My point is this: if one media house violates the agreement that was reached, why punish everybody as a whole?
But don't you all see that the problem is beyond the media houses? Don't you get a sense that there's an ego fight in the police department, too much testosterone all over the place? Like, you all are on the ground dealing with these people. I mean, let's call it what it is.
If you think the media has all these personalities, then the police department is right neck and neck with us.
Well,
I think they beat us in that.
They beat you all.
Yeah, in numbers as well. But you know, ultimately what we have to look at is what happens to Jane and Joe public when this relationship breaks down. I really want to take the opportunity. We reached out to Collier Gel. Collier Gel is a former journalist in Belize. She now works as a journalism professor in the United States and a media consultant in Belize. We reached out to her to get a statement on this particular situation, and I want to go ahead and read that because we just received it this morning. And so she says, the police and journalists have something in common. The public relies on both groups to hold wrongdoers accountable. Furthermore, there has long been an implied contract of sorts between the groups, that the news media serve as the conduit for information from the police to the public. When this relationship breaks down, the news media cannot do its job and the public loses. At a time when terrible violence and crime are rampant in Belize, the average person relies on the news media to work with police to find out what's happening and report it. The average person relies on the journalist to go where he or she cannot in search of information, from crime scenes to press conferences. While there will always be some degree of natural tension between the news media and public institutions like the police, this should not be allowed to impact society in a negative fashion. I sincerely hope that the relationship between the Belize police and news media can be mended and the implied contract restored. So thank you, Holly, for weighing in on this issue. And I believe a part of what came out from that is really the fundamental issue. How the public is impacted by this particular shutdown of information from the police department. It has been since when, September?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's worse than that, Marlene. It's also this that is playing out erodes the confidence the public has in the police department. And so the question is, do you all see resolution anytime soon?
Well, there is a meeting scheduled for today between the top brass of the police department and the media. We've asked our colleagues to turn out in numbers in our own chat group, and a number of them have already agreed. So we'll see how that turns out and what is offered and what is agreed upon. What I'd like to add, though, to what you've said, Audrey, is that it does undermine the entire process of us passing on and disseminating information to the public. Two things essentially have happened as a result of, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you can attest to this because you were a journalist some years ago, and we had that chance, we had the entitlement back then when we could approach any officer on the scene, at the crime scene, and request an interview or information or clarification on whatever, and we were afforded that opportunity. Not even an opportunity, but the entitlement. We were entitled to that because of the duty that we have, right? So what essentially has happened is that two things. What this process has done, it undermines the whole, our opportunity of giving information in a timely fashion, right? Our chance, our job to pass on information in a timely fashion. And I'll use an example. There were two murders over the weekend, one on Saturday night, one on Sunday night. We had to wait for, 12 hours to get the information. And what information am I talking about? I'm talking about,
sentences.
Yes, 3 sentences, and it does not include the basic information that we need to pass on to the public. Things like what the suspect was wearing, or the alleged gunman, which direction he was running.
Things that would help the police.
That would also help the police to solve the crime that we're talking about, right? So this kind of thing, that's just on the basis, right?
And you know, interestingly, Marion, Marlene and I went to this this workshop last year in Barbados where they were talking about these citizen journalists, and what we had was, well, this weekend with those 2 murders, we had people posting all different kind of information,
and
photographs, it's misinformation, and things that
fake news.
Exactly,
the real fake news.
And then we as journalists, that is what we do. We provide factual information out there to the public. If the police is not willing to provide us with that so that we can inform people what's happening in their neighborhoods, man, it's defeating the purpose of...
But I have a question for you,
We have this
journalists.
photo up on screen, so you can see a clear indication as to what takes place.
Yeah.
It has been for a regular period.
For context, quickly, Marlene, this is one of about 12 or 13 requests
Yeah.
that were made that were shut down in the
And the
same month.
response.
This is the police media chat group.
Chat group,
And what would happen is you would tell me what would happen,
Yeah,
please.
okay, so they've provided us, and we agreed to this, that we have a joint chat group, a Belize media police chat group, where we make the requests for whatever it is that we need, whether it's an interview, whether it's just information or clarification, and so we place our requests there, and so you'll see those are examples that I screenshot, and I also, what I did, you will see that, and this goes back to, I believe, September or
September
August.
13th. September 13th.
Yeah,
to be
September it
exact.
was. When several of us made requests for whatever it was we were requesting, and on all occasions, you can see the response, they were always denied.
If I can
Martinez
jump
is
in,
part of the public relations unit.
Yes, and if I can jump in quickly, this is my opinion based on what I have observed in that chat room on numerous occasions. A request is being made on any incident. The responding individual, officer, Rafael Martinez, in my opinion, doesn't even ask his superiors or anybody within the department before he issues a response, so that his response is as almost as simultaneous or as immediate as the question you're
Like
asking.
he's already gotten his
Exactly.
directive.
But don't you want?
And you can see that right there. If it was up just a while ago.
We'll go back to it.
When he
Yes,
says, sorry,
it was the same.
every time
almost
the same thing.
instantaneous.
Look at
No
our
interview at this time.
The request was
No
made at
interview at this time.
9:24, and the
At the
response
same
was
time.
made
At
at
9:24.
9:24.
So who did he ask? Did he contact the compol? Did he contact the CEO? Who did
I
he
think
ask?
Because if I'm
it's
not mistaken,
safe
the
to
process.
assume.
There's a
Yeah,
policy,
because if
right,
I'm
that-
not mistaken, the policy has where the request is made to the unit.
Precisely.
And that unit
Relays
contacts,
information.
relays the
Exactly.
information to the Commissioner of Police, and then the
Exactly.
Commissioner of Police makes the determination whether the incident requires an interview.
But don't you all think that part of the problem is also that the police themselves have not been trained how to deal with the media?
Well,
I mean, it's not your
why-
fault, but I have seen instances where I believe they say more than they should for a pending
Of course.
investigation.
I said
and
that
that's
yesterday.
but the
It can damage the outcome of the case.
investigation, yeah.
I mean, I look at the hype that they create when there's an arrest and everything, and you know, many cases going through the court right now, and we don't hear the conviction or non-conviction of those same individuals whom the police previously got on the media and said, like, you know, we're sure this is the man, and they talk so big, and then coming the end result
Case
is
false.
outrageous.
If you don't know
That is the
that is
also
not the
of the
media's
police.
responsibility
Exactly.
or fault.
And it is the very
I
same
think-
question that the police department can put on the media. They may not like the questions you ask, but they are not who your employers. And
So you box us
this
out
is-
and you shut
but
us
this
out?
But this is, I think, a very important point. Isani, I know you're going to respond to it, because is it that the media should not ask the question if the police officer doesn't know how to respond within what is in the best interest of getting the
case,
case
right.
through court?
See, the truth of it is that as the media, we have a right to ask the questions. You can't be in the media if you're not asking questions, if you're not constantly seeking information, if you're not looking for verifying of facts, if you're not looking for providing new information, then you're not a member of the media, in my opinion. So that if you are in front of an officer of the law, or the court for that matter, or anywhere, you're asking a question, you have the right to ask that question. Much the same as the person has the right to decline a comment. But if you're going to comment, then I would want to assume that you would give an informed opinion or a statement of fact on what you're being asked.
But
that has nothing to do with the person asking the question. It has to do with the person's choice to respond to that question.
Yeah, and I want to add to that though. What happened over the years when officers could have aptly respond to questions without putting his foot in his mouth, and now when they believe
Well,
the
part of
officers
the
simply
problem-
can't.
Don't you believe part of the problem that is that before officers were far more trained? I saw that they were more trained. I know people are actually getting into the police department because they get a recommendation from the minister.
And this is the
so,
thing.
And so you don't see where the political will is seeping into what was once a far more professional department. I mean, that's my observation
I
over
may
the
be
years.
criticized for saying this, Audrey, and I've said this time and again. It is difficult for one to learn certain proficiencies within a 6-month training course. I am sorry. But that is the truth. If you go to Belmont at the academy for 6 months, you're learning the basics. You're not necessarily learning everything that there is to know about criminal justice prior to coming into the police department. And criminal justice isn't solely relegated to solving crimes. It has to do with being able to deal with the public and the media.
And the courts.
And the courts as well. So I don't know that all of that can be condensed within 6 months.
But which occasion can they point to when they granted an interview and it compromised or prejudiced a case? Which particular case are they referring to when they say this puts certain cases in
There
jeopardy?
were only 2 matters,
Which?
as far as I can recall, where members of the media were called before the court to testify. That was the case of Laverne Antichrist,
Yes.
and there was another case before that. And we cited both of those incidents as the only
The
time.
constitutional case where where the prime minister had said certain things about a legislation too.
Those are the only
That's-
2 times we were called before the court for anything that was published or aired in the news that was then subpoenaed for an appearance.
But in fairness to the system, I think you all don't know that many of those media things, when we actually go into the courtroom
You cite
and before it, we cite them.
Yeah.
And it has damaged the cases. Not the fault of the media.
Well-
the fault of the police for having said or done certain things that affected them. For example, the bail hearing for the Duanes, and that the judge took into account the media reports, wherein, according to the media, they reported that this person was arrested, then released, then arrested, then released, and he said that was a violation of the person's rights. No fault of the media, of
Because
course,
it happened.
and it's the truth and it's what happened.
Yeah.
And so it's more an indictment against the police. And I think part of the problem is that many of you all don't know that those stories that you've covered, how it ends in the courtroom, and how defense attorneys have used those very same media statements without having to call you, because when you put your case into the defense, you don't have to call the other person. You can rely on these statements. How it has damaged the cases, and I am not afraid to say it's not the fault of the media.
Well,
it's how the police have managed
And I
matter.
think that seems to be a part of the issue here. And we have heard from the Minister of Home Affairs, no less, that that is a part of the reason why this new policy, this new form of interaction between the media and police is the new MO. I want to go to that interview just for a bit, because in it he also speaks about the fact that the problem also stems from the fact that the reports that the media produces is scaring society. So let's take a moment to look at that. Okay, we don't have it queued up as yet. This was, of course. Now, I think what is interesting about it is that prior to this interview, the Prime Minister, no less, spoke of wanting the relationship to be mended. You were at that press conference.
I was just about to put some perspective to that. So that at last Wednesday's press brief, the Prime Minister stated emphatically that the relationship between the media and the police department ought to be mended. You can't go forward like this, is essentially what he was saying. But on the other hand, Minister Ellerington, who was right there at that very same press brief, on an aside when we were interviewing him, took a totally different position, right? Such that I don't know that he was amenable to hearing what we had to say in terms of our concerns. He was just saying, well, look, a lot of times people say things in the media that is used in court and the conviction is,
But
you know,
But that's been a common allegation. I think the scare society is what bothers me more.
The thing about it is that it's almost as if though he is imposing his personal view on the department, and then we are made to suffer as a result of that.
But isn't he the minister responsible for that?
He's a substantive minister.
So my question
of
would have
Affairs.
been, did he sanction that media policy that you all crafted with the high command of the police?
I believe there was a change over, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
The cabinet reshuffle and everything.
So at the time he was not
around.
the head.
Yeah,
Yes,
he
he
was
was
not
not
the
around at
minister
the
in
time.
charge.
And this is the point that I was trying to make. If there has been a departure from what we know to be the policy, then the decent thing would have been to call us back to the table and at least inform us, you know what, this isn't working. Let's move to something else. That didn't happen. It just took place overnight. As of the 13th of September, everything was shut down.
But what worries
with no regard
me,
or no respect for what the media does on its end.
what worries me is that there was a time when police would not have given any information, and the journalists during that time, and I'm talking about 27 years having been in the media, is that the media had to find their own sources and get the news out. And maybe you all need to think about going back to that, where you,
Fine.
one media house
We
may
have been trying to do
I
that.
have an issue with that, Audrey.
you don't have to get their official report.
Well, the difference
Listen,
is...
but what
They
that
won't give you
does-
it.
Yes, but the police is accountable to the public, and they are obliged to give information to the public.
But they have a protection. They have a protection under the law, under the Constitution nonetheless, and they can use it. And it's this provision at Section 12 of the Constitution, which says basically you have the freedom of expression and right to information, blah, blah, blah. It said, however, nothing contained in or done under the authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of this section to the extent that the law in question makes reasonable provision that is required in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, and public health. And honestly, strictly telling you all legally, they can change that policy and lock you out because they can claim one of these provisions. So it leaves you all with having to do the work differently.
Even if we're asking for details on a body of John Doe found at Sancas Plaza, does that qualify as a threat to national security or any of these other?
In my honest opinion, it doesn't. But what I'm saying, seeing what the law provides and seeing the trend of the government, where they change the law to suit them when you do something they don't like, there is a provision that they can hide behind. And then when that happens, and this happens in all countries, national security and public safety is the biggest thing that they can use to then curtail freedoms. And that just pushes you all to reach your level of working at another level to uncover and disguise them.
Well, that is another point that we are at now.
Right. The worry with that, and we can use one very specific case. Let's look at the murder of Albert Catus. This is one where there was no information that came from the police until the Prime Minister released the details. Not even the family said they were aware of the facts of the case from the police.
This is another concern.
The worry I have in this situation, in the absence of information, when there's a void, people will fill it with what seems most logical.
Exactly.
And there was a lot of speculation
as to what happened.
And a lot of misinformation, and even the family had their own speculation. So if you cannot get the verified facts from the police department without jeopardizing their case,
but you got it from the best source. You got it from the Prime Minister.
When the issue of the boycott
That's a really
then it was multiple days after.
Yeah.
So I think,
That was one.
But
10 days later.
Marion was saying she had a concern over that. I want to hear what's that concern.
No, listen, the families that we talk to, right, even they have this concern, right? The police is starting to treat us the way they are treating these families of victims. They have to beg and plead to get information from the investigating officers.
No, that's...
I've had issues with that on the ground.
Go ahead.
I've had issues with that on the ground, Marion. We're going out, like you said, we should look past the police, let's go out there and investigate for ourselves. And I've done that. I do a lot of the crime stories and here at Channel 5, and that's my problem. I can get the family to talk, but all they're talking to you about is what they've heard on the streets.
Which is conjecture.
Exactly. That is the information that we're giving out there to the people.
You can have an inside source in the police, you just have to protect him or her. But I have
I'm sure a lot of us do have that.
Let's take a little moment here, and I want to get to the clip. We have the clip ready, so we'll hear. This is the interview last Wednesday with the Minister of Home Affairs, where essentially he speaks about why the situation is as it is now. Let's go to that clip.
It is not my understanding that there's a boycott between the police and the media. In fact, we decided on a new policy whereby we thought that it was more appropriate for us to give to the media press releases, and when the occasion warranted it, we thought we would have press conferences. So we held a press conference with respect to the last Usher incident, when the young boy Usher had gone lost. Remember, we called a press conference because we thought that that was appropriate. I have difficulty though with the police, with the media, having members of the police giving extensive statements to the media on a nightly basis, on almost every channel, on matters that are live before the court or matters that are under investigation. I think it unnecessarily scares the public, local as well as international, and many times the investigations are ongoing. Much of what is said is speculation, and so I don't think it helps the society. I think it does more harm than good. So I prefer for us to notify the public as to what is transpiring by means of a press release, and if it is warranted, we do press conferences.
Respectfully, sir, it's a departure from all the groundwork that had been accomplished between the media and the police department earlier this year in terms of hammering out a manual and a general approach that would have worked for both parties. You're saying essentially that...
My appointment as minister is a departure as well. I operate differently, and I like to be able to operate the way I do. But you will readily agree, all of you will readily agree, that whenever I'm asked to talk to the media, I do. I've never dodged the media. You find me anywhere. As a matter of fact, sometimes I think that Isani lives at my house because he's always there getting stories at the airport, at home, and I'm still available. But I really don't think, and the members of the police really are not happy with the attitude of the press in terms of the insistence on having individual police officers giving interviews in extenso on matters that are under investigation.
We are concerned, and I have said that it is the duty of the government to treat you well, despite the fact that it seems to be the obligation of you and your fellows to treat the government badly. But that is the way it is. So in a democracy, I am completely with you that the press should never be excluded. And I make the appeal because it is something we've talked about, and so I know that I'm not in any way going against the position of my colleagues. We will sort out that business of the disruption of relations between the media and the police.
Okay, so to clear a few things up, right? These two interviews were played in reversed order to begin with, right? So it's the PM who mentioned and who
Spoke
stated first, and then the substantive Minister of Home Affairs second. What Minister Ellington was saying, which I find to be funny, the fact that I seem to be at his house more often than not, that is on foreign affairs matters, because he doubles as the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So if I go to him looking for information, more often than not is about Guatemala and OAS and all these other stuff, not on police matters.
Right.
So I don't know that I've ever...
So it's misleading to make it seem as though I'm available for everything.
For police news.
Never have I been to his house to ask him about a murder or a crime situation, despite the office that he holds. Before that, it would have been easier for me to call Minister Aragon, who is the operational minister of the police department.
But you know, guys, last night, Shanice Middleton, my coworker, news assistant, she and I, we sat down and we were going through the numbers for the murders. And, you know, looking at the 2016 numbers and 2017. And the reason why I'm bringing that up, and I'm going to share some details that we have, is because the minister is saying that our people are scared, no? That we're creating that fear. And my thing is that our people need these information so that they can use it to know where to go, where not to go, you know, which area hot, all of those things. Because for me, personally,
or like the abduction.
Yeah, you understand what really went on. Now,
attempted abduction.
And it's interesting because I feel that what it is really is that they don't want the police to give any interviews because of the murder. The murder count is up. Well, it's going on a wrong route right now. The trend is that we're going to surpass what we did last year. And last year, according to these details, is showing that 2016 we had 137 murders for the entire year. And we're just in October. We still have 2 months to go, and we're already at 120.
No way.
That was up to this weekend.
No way.
Right, 120. It says here that there have been 49 of those murders for 2017 so far, and that's the highest in the history of Belize. 49 of those were in Southside Belize City. In 2016, there 41 of those were in Belize City. Out of the 137, 41 of those were in Belize City alone. Right now, in October, up to October 2017, we're already at 55 murders in Belize City for the year. Wow. That's 14 more than last year's count, and there are still 2 months to go. From July to October 2016, this was since Chester Williams was replaced, right, by Mr. Vidal. From July to October 2016, there were 17 murders in the old capital. At that same period this year, there are 27 recorded murders 25 of those were on South Side alone. In that same 4-month period, for 2017 from July to September, stats show that 4 murders each for July and September. August has 9 homicides and October has 10.
Wow. It is
Now,
rough.
that is rough because on an average, they're basically like 1 murder every 2 days. You understand? That's frightening. And I think these, and then last year too, there were only 3 murders in the city for September and October, and August only showed 4, and July 7. You know, so there's a complete change, and I think that's what they're trying to avoid. They're trying to avoid talking to us about what's been happening. Just in of those 10 murders in October alone, we had 3 in Jane Usher. 3 in Jane Usher, Erwin Rodriguez,
Keith Middleton,
Justin Hyde,
Hyde.
and all of them, they're saying that, well, word on the street is that they're related.
Yes.
But how would we know? How would people know if the police cannot make those links for us? And then, likewise, just in the last week and a half, there was the murder of the 2 Almendarez brothers, and then their cousin over the weekend.
But
There's
I
obvious that there's
understand what you're saying. They're trying to change the narrative.
Yeah, and
They're actually
the thing
playing
is-
it down.
Yeah,
They're trying to play
so,
it down.
But I
them-
think you all are playing into their hands to the extent that if they change the narrative and
No.
it becomes an issue with you all to sidetrack the real issue of the crime.
Look, we still go out there and we still get our information on the
Information, we
murder.
still do.
If a murder happens, we will cover it.
Yeah.
And that does not take the numbers down.
Right, it will
So,
not.
whether
But
they want to give us an
sidetrack
interview
the
or
fight
not,
with you all,
we will
you
go there and
understand?
still do
Yeah,
our-
it's
our
like a
interviews.
screen, a
Right,
smoke screen.
right.
So it's all about the media and police and us saying
change
things
the
that we're not supposed to
conversation
say.
from the issue at
Exactly,
hand.
the issue which is crime that has been on the rise. Since we've seen where, and everybody can attest to it, that in the earlier part of this year, leading up to July, we did see a decrease in the number of gun violence in Belize. There were less murders and all. And since July, there's been an increase.
And that's
I say this?
factual.
Can I-
that is factual.
Can I say this?
That is,
I understand that different commanders come in with a different style of policing. We get that. But as my colleague was mentioning, from the period where this truce was struck among the feuding groups to July 1st, when the former commander of Eastern Division South was transferred to a desk job in Belmopan, there was a ceasefire, right? And it was visible. People felt safer moving around the city. Post July 1st, there was a different change in terms of the way things were being done by law enforcement. The media and the way we operate remains the same, but on the end of the law enforcement, the modus operandi changed considerably to where the incoming commander, my opinion here, seemed to want to one-up his predecessor in the things he said and the things he's doing on the ground. And again, I admit that there's a difference in policing style, but it seems as if though there's a, forgive my word, a peeing contest in terms of who can
You mean a
outside
pissing match?
testosterone. That's what.
I think, and you said something, Audrey, and that really just triggered an issue in my mind. If we need the information from the police to relate to the public, and perhaps we can only speculate as to what the fears really are from the ministry level to the department level as to why they feel providing just basic information to the media to relate to the public is somehow not in the best interest of all. And I don't know if it has to do with perhaps the differences that have been cited in the commander's approach. Is it really having to do with it severely affecting the cases that are going to court? Is it because that the concept of the safety of Belize has somehow been shattered? We can only speculate as to what the reason is.
But the statement the minister made about the news media reporting all these crime and it's scaring the society. I feel that they're putting an onus on the media that does not belong to the owners. Governance and policy and distribution of wealth and elimination of poverty and all that is the job of the government.
His words, though, those are a matter of his opinion. Those are not what he said. isn't factual. That wasn't factual.
But
I
they
think
changed
what
the
is
narrative.
no, but and that is where I believe he should have been. The numbers should have been quoted.
Well, he did dispute
I
the
don't
data.
believe. I don't believe that if there's any fear in the public, is not the way we report the news. It is the murder count for the year.
It's a
That's what I'm saying.
story.
That's what I'm saying. They're putting the onus on the media and onus that does not belong with the
Well,
media.
let me just say one point here because we have the clip and I just can't believe anybody wants to borrow a page from Donald Trump. But Minister Elrington did. And in fact, not only did he dispute the data on the murder count, he also ventured to quote Trump. So let's go to that for a
Let's go
second.
there.
Okay, sir. You all are trying
So
to suppress information.
why you
sir.
want
You all are enemies of
No,
the
man, you get the news. You get the news before
It
us.
is your duty and obligation to send it to us,
And
sir.
if I might well imitate Mr. Trump, take a page out of
That's
his
always a
book.
good page.
Many times it is fake news.
Didn't go there.
That's a
Yes, he
dagger.
did.
Well,
That's a dagger.
But do you understand why I say they're putting an onus on the media that does not belong with the media?
Well, like Isani said, the numbers don't lie. That can't be fake.
That's
so.
a distraction.
So, and really when I heard this, I was flabbergasted because I was like, man, I'm out there, I'm seeing what's happening, and you to tell me that, where I go out there and say that's not really
That's
there.
fake.
It's fake.
Look, I think the real problem is this, right? This is the real issue. The police crime fighting skills is nowhere near where they used to be at one
Leaves a
time.
lot
When
to
they
be
had
desired.
intelligence skills and all, nobody has confidence in the police department. Even that mother who we interviewed yesterday, Karen Almendares,
yeah.
she said that publicly. She has no confidence in, and she uttered words that emulate a lot of people's opinion. They don't, or sentiments. They have no confidence in the police department for various reasons. And why is this? Is that also the media's responsibility or fault?
No, it's not. But a simple thing that Erwin Rodriguez's murder or body was really propelled by civilians, not by the police.
search, yeah.
And they basically had to, I won't say coerce, but cajole the police into coming along, and it resulted
and
in
they
something.
did their own research, their own investigation.
No, look at that versus the Kelvin Usher saga, which the family was clear in pointing out too.
Yeah.
An entire battalion
Yeah.
of people were deployed into the Lucky Strike area. Then when this guy has been reported missing since August 27th, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, August
the
27th.
family was left on its own to try to find a body.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
So
But I'm sorry, I just want to quote one thing. One of my friends, interestingly, last night, he posted on Facebook that these days I'm being reminded so much of how things were 6 years ago. There's a lot of crimes, burglaries, home invasions happening again and never getting on the news. So the public has no idea what's happening in their own neighborhoods. It's very disturbing and dangerous when people are not aware. And that's where we come in as the media. And I feel like we're not doing our jobs because the police won't assist us to do our jobs.
Well, I think
Well,
you
you're
all
doing
need to
the
be
best that you
creative.
can
Yeah,
do.
you understand? And I think that's where, and my question is that we've said this over and over, and it, for me, it feels like everything we're saying, the message that we're sending, it's just falling on deaf ears.
But
Like nothing is
to
going
put
to
some
change.
things in perspective for you all, that from my experience that I find is scary about what the minister said when he says that they can just issue press releases. 27 years ago, I was press officer for the police. I worked with the government. And all we did was go over to the police station in Belmopan, get the crime blotter, talk to the high command, prepare a press release and send it to the media. Those days the media was censored. It was only Radio Belize and they could only read what we sent. So I actually felt I had control over what was said and it was sanitized. That was then. I shiver at the thought that in this modern era, when we no longer have that muzzled media, that they would actually want us to go back to that era.
But
To a three-sentence press release.
Yeah, it is
Yes, I would have
scary.
said that.
And you all need to fight that for the
and
interest of the public.
selected by the public relations unit.
Yeah.
We were not able to get any information on the elderly gentleman that was beaten,
Yeah.
and that information
And
came
even-
from
That he was
family.
murdered.
Until he died, then we received the
Or
information.
even the abduction of the girls, that didn't come until
Yes,
after
that-
the report was
Not
made.
only that, how the police dealt with that or did not deal with it on the spot.
And let me just emphasize this point, right? what was given to us back then, the 27 years ago that you're
Yes.
referring to, because I joined
Yeah,
you
we were there.
after.
You were there 2 years
I'm
after.
I'm in the field for 25 now. So I am aware of what you're talking about,
Right.
but let me just say this. What was offered to us then is far more than what
Than
is
3
offered.
sentences.
3 sentences simply does not
I
cut
used to
it.
write them for you, that's why.
You were more thoughtful to add a few
But
more sentences.
it is scary, honestly, on a very serious note. We cannot go back to that dark era.
It's really ridiculous in this era, in this age, when we have the internet, we have so many apps, we have Facebook, when information should be at the touch of our fingertips. And getting information or the turnaround time, when we have to wait for an investigating officer to go in back from the scene to his desk hours later, type up a release, send it to the press office, who then browses, goes through it, and cuts down whatever meat he doesn't want to give us, and sends that out to us. It takes what? Several more hours, then he has to get approval and all
But
of
that
that.
comes
before-
down to the
Is
lack of
this-
training.
So I'm just saying that the turnaround time, people don't have time to wait on that.
Yeah.
Why are we stepping back in time?
Yeah.
But I look at the issue with Fitzroy Yearwood that came up last night, and you know he was removed because he gave information. He carried out his
Factual
job.
information.
Exactly,
Yes.
he carried out his job, and they reprimanded him. Basically, you understand? Where are we in terms of the police doing their job and being able to provide the information?
wanting
Let's
to cover
not
up
dismiss
something.
that as lightly for what it is, because I think this was a widely reported case with Inspector Yearwood, and I know we spoke about it several times on Open Your Eyes. And if we go back to trace what took place, when that incident took place in San Pedro, and all the
Information was-
social media is there, people are connected. So the information was already out there as to who were the possible perpetrators in the case.
Yep.
The questions were asked repeatedly to the police department. The police department continuously had no response
It changed its narrative on a couple of occasions.
Yeah,
until Inspector Yearwood did
respond.
confirm
that he was removed.
that these people were going to be
Were being sought by police,
for
yeah.
investigation. The follow-up information from the same police media unit was
That there's no such thing.
information was false, and shortly after, Inspector Yearwood was no longer a part of the media unit. Then
They come back to say that it's only one
So you
person
see
that-
what they're using a
But that you
legitimate
see how the
cause
narrative changed. That's
to
what
cover
I
up.
want to see. And I was concerned when the Prime Minister was able to give details about the murder of
Of Mr.
Albert
Catus.
Catus.
Okay.
But yet, you all then did not have access to the police to ask them, well, how the Prime Minister knows that? Did you all have someone in custody?
I think there was
But
a
even
fly
has
in
been
the-
arrested and
questions.
charged? I mean,
Can
those were
I-
serious details that only the killer who was there or
Would
part
know.
of it would have
Can I-
known.
can I say this
and
as
that,
someone-
that has been left just hanging there, and that is even scarier.
Scarier.
But then, Ms.
Right.
Audrey, doesn't that go back to what you said initially, where when it goes to trial, if someone is charged, that they're going to read back all this statement that was said by the Prime Minister that can damage the case?
And not only that, what it's showing is a new trend as to where we're going back to 30 years ago, where they control the narrative.
Yes.
And they're doing it craftily. And the Prime Minister has a way and a presence at a press conference to just gag everyone and spew all these beautiful words as though he's the only one with intelligence and nobody questions it. I was flabbergasted at that revelation that he gave.
Well, this is the thing. As someone who dealt with the family of Mr. Catus immediately following the Prime Minister's statements at the press brief, the family was appalled that they were not made privy to any of that information. The second thing that came immediately thereafter was, well, if this narrative is so detailed, if this account is so vivid, then why isn't someone in custody?
Yeah.
Why aren't charges being brought or what have you?
Yeah.
Since the story is so very lucid.
So, I think in the interest of time, we have thoroughly discussed why the media has their concerns about this breakdown in relationship. And I know the media is we are actively seeking a resolution. The police department has agreed to a meeting, right? Tell us a bit about the expectations going into this meeting.
I'd love to begin if you guys
Go
don't
ahead,
mind.
Go ahead.
As someone who has sat around the table with members of the department earlier this year, I am skeptical going in. I am apprehensive simply because in my mind, we have been down this road before. We were down this road 7 or 8 months ago, and we're right back here again. What happens next? What concessions will be made on either end in terms of compromising so that we move forward in one accord? What do we do? I don't know, because nothing has been outlined as yet. Am I going to sit around that table this morning to hear all the fancy whoos and ahs of the compol or whoever else is in attendance, and then we go back to whatever they want tomorrow?
Yes,
I don't know.
you see, every time the rules are made or agreed to, it's always the police department that lays down what ground rules or where the goalposts will be, and then we agree, or we can either agree to it or just say we don't like it, and we still have to agree to that. Yeah.
Because
but
remember,
those will be the conditions of quote unquote policy, police media policy, or an agreement, and they can at any time just pull the rug from under us, as they did in the police chat. We didn't even know. I was one who inquired over and over. Are you withholding information intentionally? What is the...
Yeah. There's no communication.
Why are we being denied interviews? We were not given that right, or that, we were not offered that explanation.
And you were still upholding your end of the bargain in covering what is their PR efforts, their sporting events, their meet and greet,
their
and
great
whatnot.
program and all these other stuff.
So, the meeting takes place today, and we just wanted to have this conversation as a context going into it. Once again, highlighting the importance of this issue. We will continue to do the work nonetheless, but of course, in an effort to get the facts to the public, which is what they deserve, we need the cooperation of the police department. So
can I end on one
note? Yeah.
I would like to take this opportunity to once again humbly invite my colleagues within the media fraternity. Doesn't matter if you're print, radio, or television. We need your presence at the Raccoon Street precinct this morning at 10 o'clock, and kindly let's show our strength in numbers.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, the focus will be on UN Day, so stay tuned.